You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Hello, faithful Colts fans, and welcome to the Colts Blue Zone podcast. My name is Joe Hopkins, and joining me virtually is Mike Chappell. Mike, we have some history to discuss today.
All the wrong kind.
The wrong kind if you're a Colts fan. We'll discuss their very entertaining loss to the Vikings, why it'll go down in the record books. We'll talk about takeaways, and we'll also take a look at where the Colts stand in the draft order, which might be the priority for a lot of Colts fans at this point in this season. But before we get into all of that, a bit of news breaking on this Monday. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network reporting that Jonathan Taylor is likely done for this season. Taylor left the game on Saturday after suffering an injury on the Colts' first drive. It was reported to be a high ankle sprain. Ankle's been bothering Taylor all year, and at this point, with just three weeks left, Mike, it really makes sense to shut him down.
Yeah, I talked with someone at the Colts complex, and they were waiting for confirmation this afternoon, but that's the expectation. It makes zero sense. Well, with a high ankle sprain, you're talking 2 to 4 weeks anyway, best case. So it makes no reason to try to push him back, which they won't do. It's just too bad. It's just been a frustrating season for JT with having the ankle. He had turf too early in the year, and then he had the high ankle sprain. And you saw when he was right, he was right. But, and I tell you, we'll get into it, but he got injured on the third play of the game on that screen pass, and he would have lit up the Vikings. He would have had a big game. There's no doubt in my mind, but wasn't to be.
Yeah, the Colts ran for 170-some yards without him. So if Jonathan Taylor was on the field, he was in for a heck of a day. Sorry to Taylor. Sorry to everyone who had him on fantasy. I think he got you about 2 points in the first week of the fantasy football playoffs, so that's never fun. But let's talk about real football here. The Colts 4-8-1 visiting the 10-3 Vikings. Indianapolis without two of the top three corners in this one, Kenny Moore and Brandon Faison. Faison missed the game with the illness. Moore still dealing with that ankle injury from a few weeks back. As you may have heard, the game got off to a great start for Indianapolis. Rookie Dallas Flowers returned the opening kick 49 yards, setting Indy up near midfield. Flowers really establishing himself as quite the return weapon in recent weeks. The Colts reached first and goal at the 4, but the drive would stall from there, and Indianapolis settled for a short field goal to take a 3-0 lead. From here, things would get crazy. After a quick stop on defense, the Colts block Minnesota's punt. Undrafted rookie linebacker JoJo Domann snatches it out of the air and returns it back 20 yards, 25 yards about, just for a touchdown. Special teams really coming up big to start this game and putting the Colts up 10-0. Minnesota looking to respond. Their drive lasts just 2 plays. The first play, a 40-yard run by Dalvin Cook. The second play, Cook fumbles on a run up the middle, punched out by Zaire Franklin and recovered by Isaiah Rodgers. Colts take over at the 34. This time, the Colts would be able to punch it in. 34-yard catch and run by Jelani Woods gets Indianapolis in the red zone. 3 plays later, Deion Jackson catches a swing pass from 1 yard out. Touchdown. That's 17-0 Colts. Everything going the Colts' way early, Mike.
And that's what you want. You're in Minnesota, and that place is loud. It is. You hear about Seattle and New Orleans. This place is really, it vibrates. And what you want to do is take the fans out of it. And early on, the fans were already starting to boo the Vikings. So, and it was everybody. It was the defense getting a takeaway, the offense capitalizing, special teams. It was a great start to what was an awful finish.
Yeah, still just the first quarter here, but Minnesota beginning to panic. They face 4th and 1 at their own 31 and decide to go for it. They're stuffed. Turnover on downs gives Indianapolis great field position, but the Colts can't take advantage. Indy reaches the 8-yard line, but on 3rd and 2, Zach Moss is stuffed for a loss, and the Colts settle for a field goal. Minnesota down 20. They again find themselves in 4th and 1 at their 31. They again go for it, and they again fail. Incomplete fake punt pass gives Indianapolis another short field, but the Colts again settle for a field goal after failing to gain any yards. Chase McLaughlin's 49-yarder puts the Colts up 23-0. The teams traded punts on the next two possessions, and a 55-yarder by Matt Hawk pins Minnesota back at their own 5. That meant Julian Blackmon did not have far to travel after intercepting Cousins on third down. Pick 6 for Blackmon and the Colts. The Colts had gone 33 consecutive games without a pick 6, the longest drought in the NFL. Indianapolis now up 30-0 on the 10-win Vikings. Colts force another punt on Minnesota's next drive, giving their offense the ball back with 4 minutes left in the half. Indy would drive down to the Vikings 11 before yet again settling for a fourth field goal of the half. McLaughlin connects. It's 33-0 at halftime. Mike, what were your thoughts at the half?
Honestly, that they should have had 45 points. I mean, I think they were 1-4 in the red zone and 3 trips inside the 10 or the 11, whatever it was. And it's crazy when you're thinking that as you get 33 and you're thinking, gosh, you should have had 10 more anyway. So, and normally that bothers you because you're leaving points on the board, but you're thinking, oh, we got 33. But again, it was missed opportunities. They could have really had the Vikings in a deeper hole.
Yeah, and it's hard to even think that it could have been much deeper had you not paid attention to the field position Indianapolis squandered. Did you ever think it was statistically possible for the Colts to lose this game?
Well, they put out a stat, and in the 102-year history of the NFL, teams with a 30-plus lead were 1,548 and one with one tie. So, no, you think, that's a 99.99% chance to win. And now we're probably going to keep going and show you how that it's 1,548 and 2.
That's right. So the third quarter gets started with a Minnesota punt, but after that, the Vikings offense woke up. The Vikings rip off 3 straight touchdown drives. The longest took just 3 minutes and 40 seconds off the clock. Meanwhile, the Colts managed 1 field goal and 3 punts. That field goal, in natural Colts fashion, a 50-plus yarder. Chase McLaughlin now holds the Colts franchise record for most 50-plus yard field goals made in a single season, but that's not the record everyone is talking about after this game. Early fourth quarter, Minnesota driving into Colts territory. First down at the 41, when Cousins' deep pass is picked off by the rookie Rodney Thomas. Cousins' wide receiver just stopped on the route, and the rookie said, "Thank you very much." Colts take over at their 2-yard line after Thomas stepped out of bounds on the interception, and they go 3 and out. Minnesota fair catches the punt at the 50, which means the interception cost the Vikings a net of 9 yards and took less than a minute off the clock. Turnovers can hurt you in a lot of ways, but the Colts did not make the Vikings pay for that one. Minnesota would need just 1 minute and 36 seconds to score their 4th touchdown of the half. Adam Thielen's touchdown from 1 yard out makes it a 1-score ball game with 5 minutes and 30 seconds to go, 36-28. Indianapolis is in need of some points, but instead, Deion Jackson has the ball stripped, and Minnesota defensive back picks it up and runs into the end zone, but the refs ruled that Jackson was down. The call ends up being reversed. Jackson clearly fumbled on the play, but the return for a touchdown does not stand since the officials blew the play dead. Minnesota robbed of the touchdown, but does get the football. Vikings take over at the 46. They pick up a first down, but then 3 straight incompletions sets up 4th and 10. False start moves them back 5 more, and the Vikings decide to go for it on 4th and 15, but cannot convert. The Colts take over at their 44 with under 3 minutes left in the ball game. Indianapolis plays it safe, and they keep it on the ground. A pitch to Zach Moss gains 11, but he's unable to stay in bounds, thus stopping the clock. 3 more Moss runs sets up a 4th and 1 at Minnesota's 36, 2.5 left, and the Vikings have no timeout. So first down here basically wins the ball game for the Colts. Jeff Saturday opts to go for it. QB sneak with Matt Ryan is ruled short. Minnesota takes over on downs. Mike, what was your thoughts on the ruling where the officials marked Ryan short and also the decision to go for it rather than try a long field goal or pin the Vikings back with a punt?
I'd like to have known what the analytics were on what it says to do. It seems like a coin flip. I was probably in favor of going for it. I mean, it wasn't 4th and 1. It was 4th and, inches. We're talking inches. Ryan had been 3 of 3 on sneaks since Jeff Saturday took over. And my goodness, inches. 4th and inches against a 53, 54-yard field goal, even though McLaughlin has been nails the whole time. I understand you make the field goal. It's a 2-position game, and the game is virtually over because there's not time with the timeouts. But it's also over if you pick up the first down. I was okay with it. I thought the officials maybe blew the play dead a little early. I don't know. They normally let that thing play out. And if you go back and look at the very end of it, Ryan sort of lunged for the first down. He may have had the first down anyway, but they didn't get the spot. So I was okay with it. Would you have kicked or would you have gone for it?
I think I would have gone for it as well. Just, game on the line. You need a foot, maybe less. If you can't pick that up, do you really deserve to win the game? And then the other part of that is, yeah, they turned it on over to Minnesota, but if they had tried the field goal and missed, that would have gave Minnesota even better field position, getting it from where the kick was attempted instead of the line of scrimmage. So those two factors kind of played into it. I almost thought about punting it and just trying to pin them, inside their own 10 at their 5 or something like that. But that would have been the least aggressive of the 3 options. So I think going for it was the right call.
The only thing with punting, though, is you had shown zero, chance of stopping Minnesota. So I wouldn't have trusted that would have put the game in the hands of the defense. And with the way that the Vikings were just going through the defense, that would have been such a, high risk option, I think. But I could argue either way on the field goal or the sneak. And again, it was 4th and inches, for crying out loud.
Yeah, and bringing a different officiating crew, they probably let that play out, and Matt Ryan picks up the first down. A lot of questionable calls by the refs. The Colts probably got the best out of a lot of them. They called back 2 Minnesota fumble recoveries for touchdowns. The other one was a Michael Pittman, where they said his forward progress was stopped. Really stopping forward progress sooner than we usually see in NFL games in this one. But nonetheless, after the turnover on the downs, Vikings take over at their 36 with 2 minutes and 15 seconds to go, and it just takes one play for Dalvin Cook to find pay dirt. He takes a screen pass 64 yards, weaving through the Colts defense. 2-point conversion after the touchdown is good. That's 32 points unanswered. And we have a tie ball game, 36-36. Colts get the ball back with about 2 minutes and 11 seconds to go. But on first down, Ryan is sacked by a blitzing linebacker. Colts will go 3 and out and punt the ball away with 1 minute left. Thankfully, Indy's defense is able to come up with a stop of their own, and we have overtime. Both teams got a possession in this one, but were unable to score. 2 minutes to go, and the Colts are on the verge of their second tie of the year, something that's never happened in NFL history. 2 ties for one team in one season. If it was going to happen to anybody, it would be this Indianapolis Colts team. But instead, the Vikings, on their second chance with the football, they work the ball to the Colts 40. Then Kirk Cousins hits Justin Jefferson for 13 yards with 20 seconds left. No timeouts. Minnesota hurries up to the line to spike it and clock it. But the Colts defenders just kind of lay on Jefferson, clearly delaying the game, and they get called for it. 5-yard penalty gets the Vikings that much closer, and with 7 seconds left, Minnesota attempts a 40-yard game winner, and it's good. Final score, 39-36. Mike, we witnessed the largest comeback in NFL history.
I beg to differ. we witnessed the greatest collapse in NFL history. So again, kudos to Minnesota, but that's just, you cannot allow that to happen if you're a team. And keep in mind, this defense gave up 33 points in the fourth quarter the previous week at Dallas. Now, I realize that the offense had all the turnovers, but still, 55 points, 58 points in the fourth quarter and overtime the last 2 weeks. There's got to be a word better than embarrassing, but I don't know what it is right now. So, it's one thing to get beat when McLaurin out-wrestles Gilmore for the ball or whatever. Like this is just inexcusable. And it is sort of, well, that's 2022. And, what else can happen? You keep thinking that you've reached rock bottom. And the Colts say, oh, you think so? We got 3 more games to play. So and you talk to the coach, you talk to Saturday, you talk to Ryan, the media goes in the locker room, and you look for answers, and there are none. It's and I kind of wrote about it after the game, and where do you lay the blame? The defense for giving up whatever it was, 400 and some yards and all these points in the second half, or the offense for just if they go back and make 2 third-down conversions, the fourth and 1, but extend a couple of series, and maybe kick a field goal, whatever. Just do something in the second half. Well, they had 9 possessions, I think, in the second half, and they got the field goal. That's it. 132 yards after halftime. So as much as the defense should be embarrassed, this was as much. They scored 36 points, season high, and they had 1 offensive touchdown. That's inexcusable.
Yeah, we'll play the blame game here in just a second, but first, need new windows? Contact your hometown team today. Hometown Window and Doors are Central Indiana's premier, locally owned, full-service Anderson window dealer with master installers. From design to installation, the Hometown team handles it all. They carry unlimited options with competitive pricing. Call them direct to get 35% off your windows through December 15th, which is over, so I think it's about 25% off now. Sorry if you missed out on it. I've been talking about it for weeks. The Hometown Windows and Doors gives you all the perks of a national brand with that hometown feel. Visit them at hometownwindowteam.com today. All right, Mike, takeaways. We've discussed a few of these, but the historical significance going down in the record books in the worst of ways. 33 points, largest comeback in NFL history. Frank Reich, as if the Colts haven't taken enough from Frank Reich this year. They took away his record for the largest comeback back when he was with the Bills in 1992. The 33-point halftime lead was Indy's largest since 1997, and it's the Colts' 6th largest point margin in franchise history. Mike, you already said it. 1,548 1-1 was the previous record of teams with a 30-plus point lead. That's a 99.9% win probability, and yet the Colts found a way. You gave them a chance, and they found a way. What do you think is worse? Losing in the fashion that the Colts did on Saturday, or losing how the Patriots did on Sunday against the Raiders, where it's a tie game, last play of the game, they for some reason decided to start lateraling the football, and if you didn't see it, I believe it was Jacoby Myers just heaves the ball backwards towards Mac Jones. Chandler Jones of the Raiders intercepts it, gives Mac Jones the dirtiest stiff arm, and just houses it for the win for the Raiders, and that loss actually bumped the Patriots out of their playoff spot. So I guess my point in all this is it could be worse. I would rather the Colts have the largest collapse in NFL history than lose on a boneheaded play with so much more on the line.
we were going back and forth. The guys, the Colts media guys, we always exchange dumb ideas. We're thinking that with Patriots Colts, that idiotic lateral, which again it was a 55-something fumble return for a touchdown, is how it's recorded. That replaces the Colt Anderson Griff Whalen fake punt as the most moronic play, which that's good because I get so tired of seeing, Colt Anderson and Griff Whalen doing their little thing. But it's just because this, again, that came with playoff implications. The one yesterday, and it just there's nothing good that comes out of that. It's hard to imagine. It just goes to show you as a coach, you can draw up the greatest game plan and have the perfect approach to a game, and then it's on the players. And it's hard to know what goes through a player's mind like that. But I mean, you go down and you go into overtime. That's it. So it was really kind of interesting to listen to. Was it Jacoby Myers? Is that who the lateral was? Where he said, I was trying to make a play. I was trying to be a hero, and he knows he was wrong. He knows he was wrong. But the running back should have just gone down. What's he doing lateral? Because that could have been a fumble return for a touchdown. So, but it was kind of, from a Colts perspective, it was kind of cool to see some other team being laughed at. So, you take your positive points where you can.
That's right. Especially when it happens to the Patriots. I mean, all the more sweet for Colts fans.
That's never a bad thing.
Absolutely.
And since we're on that, which is really crazy, it was what a weekend. What about Tom Brady, another former Patriot? They were ahead 17-0. And then they were outscored by 33. The Colts were only outscored by 32 unanswered points. So once again, an ex-Patriot one-ups them.
Truly a wild NFL weekend. I mean, we'll talk about it in a second, but the Jaguars walk off pick six in overtime against the Dallas Cowboys. The Chiefs going to overtime with the Houston Texans, and then they had the walk-off touchdown run. So the AFC South in the heart of a lot of exciting finishes. I mean, even the Titans and Chargers, that was a game-winning field goal.
Should have been overtime.
Should have been overtime. That's right. So incredibly entertaining weekend of football, to say the least. For this Colts game, though, takeaway number 2, defense was tale of two halves. I mean, if we break it down, the offense was pretty bad the entire game. They scored just the one offensive touchdown. The defense was tremendous in the first half. 0 points allowed, 82 yards allowed just 3 first downs. They had 3 sacks, and they forced 2 turnovers, the fumble and the pick six. And that's if you don't count the special teams block. I mean, it is special teams, but it's kind of you're on defense at the same time. You turn to the second half. Second half in overtime, to be exact. 39 points allowed, 436 yards allowed, 29 first downs allowed. They had the 1 turnover on kind of the gimme from Kirk Cousins where he just threw it out there and the receiver stopped running. Cousins, after halftime, was 28 of 42 for 417 yards, 4 touchdowns, and the 1 interception. As you mentioned, Mike, the Colts have allowed 58 points in the fourth quarter and overtime in these last 2 games. I mean, they deserve, I would say, as much of the blame for this collapse as the offense, and if not close to it, because it's hard to be much worse in one half of football than the Colts were in the third and fourth quarter Saturday.
Again, it's just make a play. We're not saying have 3 great drives or three and outs. Make a play here. They're either side. And I went back and looked, and we can get into Matt Ryan in a little bit, but since the great come out game against the Raiders, this offense has done nothing. And the main thing is staying on the field. They're 18 for 59 on third downs. That's 30%. So the blame game is there. We've seen that Frank Reich wasn't the problem, wasn't the main problem. This is a team-wide. There is something wrong with this team. There's no other way of saying it. There's something wrong with it. And it's not Jeff Saturday. It's not Frank Reich. Part of it's Matt Ryan. But from top to bottom, there's something wrong. This is a team that's got good defensive players. It does. With Buckner and Gilmore and all these guys. And Zaire Franklin. There's something wrong when you're giving up historic numbers in bunches. And this will be addressed in the offseason, one way or the other. To some level, it will be addressed.
Yeah, Colts in a few short weeks will be entering yet another crucial offseason for the future of the franchise. Let's talk about the offense now. They just failed to score touchdowns. Of Indianapolis's 36 points, just 6 of those came by way of offensive touchdown. The Colts obviously had the pick 6, the punt block, and 5 field goals to go with it. Colts couldn't take advantage of good field position. They started at their 40-yard line or better on 5 drives, and those drives resulted in just 12 points, 4 field goals and 1 turnover on downs. Matt Ryan didn't turn the ball over, but he didn't do a whole lot to help either. He finished
he tried one time on that one push fumble. I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah, he definitely gave it a go. He had a couple fumbles in the game, but finished with 182 passing yards on 33 attempts. 14 of those went to Michael Pittman Jr., who had 10 catches for just 60 yards. Longest completion was a 36-yarder to Jelani Woods, and then he never saw the ball again. No wide receiver had a catch longer than 15 yards. I mean, you hate to really pile on a guy like Parks Frazier, who's kind of thrust into the position of play caller, and I still don't think the Colts have named someone who they're going to call offensive coordinator, but it sure shows out there because the offensive strategy doesn't seem to be, too advanced, I'll say.
We've said this before when Dave's been in the studio, and I truly believe this. They've done what you're not supposed to do. They're putting people in positions to fail. They just have. And that's what Jeff Saturday. Anyone who thought that was going to be a fix was delusional. It wasn't. Parks Frazier the same way. Keep in mind now they're operating without Marcus Brady, Frank Reich, and Clayton Adams, who went to Stanford. So it's a bad situation, and at some level you just want this to end. You want it to end because you think they reach rock bottom, and then you find out there's another level. And it's really hard to imagine what the next level down would be, seriously, that didn't involve an injury to someone. So it's really kind of painful to watch because the players are taking the brunt of this, and they're playing their asses off. They are. You can argue that they're playing undisciplined sometimes and all that, but I'm not getting into the quitting mode or the tanking. They don't need to try to tank. We saw that Saturday. I mean, you don't have to. They're doing that pretty well on their own, so we just need this to get over so they can start, owner Jim Irsay can start the process of rebuilding a greatly broken franchise.
Mike, I have 2 questions for you before we move on. The first has to do with quarterback. We've kind of talked about it the last couple of weeks, but how long do the Colts stick with Matt Ryan? As we discussed, I don't think he was the main factor in the Colts' collapse, but he certainly didn't do anything to help. And you need your quarterbacks to make plays, especially in the fourth quarter when the game is on the line. He had several opportunities, did not really do a whole lot with them. You spoke with Saturday. I saw you had an article up that Saturday was non-committal about sticking with Ryan moving forward.
In my mind, if you don't make the change now, you're not going to make it, barring injury, of course. Yeah, he was asking. It was, well, we haven't really gotten into that yet. We've got to evaluate, and that's not a rousing endorsement. It's not an endorsement at all. I mean, what you say is, yeah, he's our quarterback. So it leaves the notion certainly that there's something to be evaluated, and I'm not saying that because of the possible financial ramifications. You know, if he's on the roster next year, he counts 35 million and change, I think it is. If you cut him, he's due 18 million because of the contract guarantee, but you save 17 million. If he goes out next week and blows out a knee and he can't pass his physical, he's on your roster. But I just don't know. And I'm a Matt Ryan fan. I like the guy. I think he's a great leader. He's had a great career. I just don't know how much is left. It looks like there's not a lot of zip on the ball. He looks to me like that he can't. Well, at first he can't trust his protection, and then he doesn't trust his protection. It seems like he's just indecisive, and he anticipates pressure when it's not there, even though it's there a lot of the time. I sort of anticipate a change at quarterback. I assume that would be Foles and not Ellinger. I don't know, but if you're not going to change it now, then you're going to ride it out with him. And I don't know that a change at quarterback is going to matter because again, this team is fundamentally broken. So I don't know, but I won't be surprised. I'll be more surprised if Ryan is a quarterback for the Charger game than if it's someone else. I think it's probably time to make a change, just to make a change.
Yeah, I agree with you. Not that I think the Colts would suddenly get a vast improvement at quarterback play from Nick Foles or Ellinger. Probably Foles. I believe Ellinger was inactive for this past game, and Foles was the number 2. But you got to go with something else. When it's not working, you just got to try something different. I mean, we all know what the definition of insanity is. And at a certain point, you got to get someone in there. And I mean, come on, Ellinger got a shot. Ryan's got a shot. You might as well be fair and give Nick Foles one, too.
It's amazing. We've talked about this. No one has been jerked around more than Nick Foles. I mean, he's got to be wondering what's going on here. And again, he may go out there and just play awful. I don't know. But right now, it's not working with Ryan. Again, the numbers are kind of fuzzy in my head because they all get kind of mushed together. But over these last 4 games, he's completed like 62% of his passes, and it's like 6.1 yards per attempt, 9 yards per completion. That's ridiculous. And they've got like 6 touchdowns and 9 or 10 or 11 turnovers. It's just not working. And what's crazy is I think the offensive line's playing a little better. I think Bernard Ryman is kind of settling down. I do. He still has the occasional, hiccup like rookies do. But I think they're playing better. But right now the quarterback is just not giving them a good enough chance to win.
Yeah, I agree. You got to get someone in there who can push the ball down the field to back defenses up off your wide receivers a little bit. My second question to you is, how hot is Jeff Saturday's seat? I mean, it seems unimaginable that an interim head coach could then be fired himself. But after the collapse at Dallas and then this collapse at Minnesota, I mean, it's got to be going through Jim Irsay's head right now.
I'm laughing. I thought about that. I really did. There is not a chance there's not a chance you fired the interim coach. I mean, that would be the most incredible thing to do. I'm still laughing, but I thought when I saw the hot seat on your list here, it was for next year. Yeah, I just think this is one where you kind of strap him in a chair and say, "You're the guy. You're the guy." But more important, the question would be is, what is this doing for his opportunity to be the head coach? And it's not helping. But again, I go back to I don't know what he could have done, short of taking this team to the playoffs to make this a realistic possibility. But I can't get past I still laugh at can they fire an interim coach? I wonder if an interim coach has ever been fired. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know. And then who takes over the team? Gus Bradley or someone that a lot of people were arguing for to be the first interim head coach. Not that I'm calling on Saturday to get fired.
If they do that, they just find another Ring of Honor guy who's not doing it. Bring Tart Glenn back since, Bill Brooks is there. We could just go around the Ring of Honor and see who take numbers and see who wants to do it.
Yeah. I doubt Jim Irsay.
We've gone off the rails right here, but that's all right.
But we'll serve the Colts, so we're just staying in for them there. We'll definitely speak a lot more about Saturday, the Colts quarterback decisions and whatnot on Thursday when Dave joins the team and we preview the Monday night matchup. I mean, who wouldn't want this team in prime time? Come on, exciting things happen in the fourth quarter when this team plays football. Colts and Chargers.
Must see TV.
That's right.
Need new windows? Let the Hometown team help. Hometown Windows and Doors is Central Indiana's premier locally owned full-service Anderson dealer with master installers. From design to installation, we handle it all, carrying nationally known brands like Anderson with more options and competitive pricing. Call us direct and get 25% off your windows if you buy within the next 60 days.
Please contact your Hometown team today. We are Central Indiana's premier locally owned full-service Anderson dealer.
National brand, hometown feel.
All right, Mike, believe it or not, but the Colts' playoff chances are still not dead, as you so eloquently put it a week or two ago. The body's on the ground, but it is still twitching. So this is the situation. Colts have 4 wins. All the wild card teams have 8 or more wins with 3 games to go. So Indianapolis would need to win the AFC South to make the playoffs.
You've really looked this up. You've studied this.
Oh yeah, of course I did, because it includes a Titans free fall. They've lost 3 in a row. The 7-7 Titans would need to lose out, and the 4-9-1 Colts would need to win out. And then of the 2 7-win teams, the Colts would have the better winning percentage because of their tie. So there is still a chance, Mike. Speaking of the AFC South, the Titans' division hopes are in peril, and not because of the Colts. Tennessee, they've lost to the Chargers this past week, the Jaguars the week before, and the week before that, they lost to Philadelphia. Meanwhile, the 6-8 Jaguars have won 3 of their last 4, including Sunday's overtime win over the Cowboys. Just 1 game back, the Jaguars couldn't end up taking the division from Tennessee. The Titans play at Jacksonville Week 18 in a matchup that very well could decide the division. How exciting is that, Mike?
I tell you what, we're getting a preview of who might be the team to beat in the AFC South moving forward. Trevor Lawrence looks like the real deal. He's got an actual coach/quarterback guru in Doug Peterson. They got young talent. They got talent on defense. For all the jokes we've made over all the years, and deservedly so, on the Jaguars, these guys are showing who may be the who may be the team to beat in the division moving forward.
Yeah, I said last week on the show when we were discussing the Titans firing their general manager that it's the Jaguars that gives me concerns as I look to the future of this division, and they certainly proved that on Sunday. Trevor Lawrence, the first overall pick in the draft by the Jaguars, and he certainly seems to be making their draft pick worth it. Speaking of draft picks, let's look at the draft order now, something a little more at hand for the Colts rather than their playoff chances. The Colts move from the 7th overall pick to the 6th overall pick if the season were to end today, and they can move into 5th if the Rams beat the Packers on Monday Night Football. It was a good weekend for the Colts draft position. 6 teams that entered the weekend with 5 or fewer wins got a victory, including Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Jacksonville, Las Vegas, New Orleans, and Denver. Of course, Denver without Russell Wilson, then they pick up a win. Go figure that. The remaining schedule for Indianapolis, we talked about it. At home, Monday night against the Chargers. After that, they travel to New York to play the Giants on New Year's Day. Giants just came up with a huge win over Washington to keep their playoff hopes looking good. And then the Colts play the Houston Texans the final week of the season, the one-win Houston Texans, and yet the Texans have pushed the Cowboys and the Chiefs in back-to-back weeks. They pushed the Chiefs into overtime, and the Cowboys game went down to the final seconds, and Dallas was just able to pull out a win in that one. So, Mike, looking at its draft order here, it's looking more and more likely that the Colts could find themselves with a top 5 draft pick.
And that probably won't. You're into this. I sort of compartmentalize, and I'm not quite there yet. But top 5, they're still going to get the third best quarterback, right? I mean, and they may have to move up a spot.
Well, the third quarterback. We'll see who ends up being best, but they'll probably get the third quarterback.
The third quarterback, but yeah, correct, because Houston's going to take one, and they'll get the third one, but the higher you are, the better you are. The higher you are, the better chance you get who you want, and the less it'll take to move up a couple of spots, to get to where you want to go. Maybe you trade up to 3 with Chicago. I don't know. So it's really, really interesting. And again, I just don't see. Can you imagine this season ending losing to Houston at home? Can you imagine that? I mean, holy smokes. Yes, I can. But again, it's I've been through this a lot when they were the 1-15s and the 3-13s and the 2-14s. And it's very, very interesting to consider draft positioning over the last month of the season. But all that tells you is that your franchise is a mess. And we won't go down the rabbit hole too much, but what I said like last Thursday with Dave and you is that the problem is this is not going to be a quick fix. It's not. Because the quarterback you get is more than likely not going to be ready to play. So then if Ryan's not here, you bring in another veteran unless it's Foles. And it's going to be a couple-year project, and maybe the fan base will be okay with that if they know there's a plan in place, if they know – and I think that's the case. If they know that you've got a quarterback who has promise and you can say, listen, bear with us, we're going to do this the right way, but at least we've got the guy. I think the fan base is okay with that. They're sick and tired of this is our bridge to the next guy, whether that bridge is Rivers or Wentz or Ryan. So, the last 3 weeks, it can't get over quick enough in my mind because I really want to see where this franchise goes.
And I feel like we've been saying this year after year, but this is another huge offseason for the Colts franchise. Until you find your quarterback, it's always a huge offseason for your franchise, which is part of the reason there's so much attention on draft order. If the Colts already had their guy at quarterback, I don't think there'd be such spotlight on what draft pick they end up with, 6th, 8th, 10th, whatever. If the Colts need a receiver, defensive end, they could probably find a decent one there. Finding the quarterback just is so crucial. You look at the teams ahead of them. Chicago at number 2, they probably don't need a quarterback. Denver at 3, do they re-sign Geno Smith?
Seattle.
Denver at 3, but Seattle owns their draft pick. Does Seattle re-sign Geno Smith? Cardinals at 4, I don't think Kyler Murray's going anywhere. And then at the 5th spot, even if the Rams lose and their draft pick stays at 5, which the Detroit Lions own their draft pick, do the Lions stick with Jared Goff? Lions are playing great football lately. Goff is playing really well. So a lot of questions to be answered. You look right behind the Colts. The Falcons and the Panthers are both 5-9. So, and I'm sure they'll be in the quarterback market. So if the Colts can stay ahead of those two teams in the draft order, that'd be really big. 3 weeks left to go. A lot to be determined here. First things first, the Colts are trying to move on from their collapse on Saturday so that they can play the Chargers because, we can talk draft order and all that, but I don't think that's even being mentioned in this locker room right now. Jeff Saturday is trying to get a win for his career. A lot of these players are still trying to go out there and play good football for their careers, especially the guys on the final years of their contract, the leaders in that locker room. There's a lot of pride. I know there's a lot of personal pride on this team because there are a lot of good football players, and so they're going to be scratching and clawing, doing their best to win these last 3 games. Thank you so much for joining us on the Colts Blue Zone podcast. That'll do it today. Please subscribe and download for us so that my bosses keep paying me every 2 weeks. We will be back on Thursday. Follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone so that if something happens between now and Thursday, we can keep you updated on that. And until next time, thank you so much for listening. Take it easy out there, Colts fans.